All right, the mayor's work session for planning and development transition meeting will come to order. Thanks everyone for making time today. We're kind of doing this in a little bit more formal setting than usual to try to work through some issues. We are going to record this today, so your mics are hot and we are recording it. It's going to make it a little easier on us to update our city council on how we're moving forward with this kind of comprehensive, complex process. It will save Ashley and myself several hours of phone calls, hopefully. And we want to be transparent with council on how we're trying to reorganize, and then also have it for us to revisit if we have future questions on kind of how we decided to proceed. First of all, I want to thank everyone for coming in on the dais and at the podium. We have, obviously, City of Rollingwood folks, myself, Gavin Massigill, Mayor. We've got Ashley Wayman, City Administrator. We've got Carrie Kaler, our outgoing Director of Development. We've got Desiree Adair, our City Secretary, rather. On the City Engineer side for Kay Freeze, we've got Lauren Winnick-Morin. We've got Engineer A.B. Salinas, Senior Planner Brandon Melland. On this, for representing the City Attorney and Rampage Law, we've got Charlie Zeck, City Attorney, Bryce Cox, planner on staff at Rampage Law, and then from inspections, from ATS engineers that handle all of our inspections, we've got our inspections manager, Dondi Atwell. Have I missed anyone in the room? All right, great. Again, thanks everyone for being here, making time. We're going to try to move quickly in this hour-and-a-half meeting. We've got a lot of ground to cover. I'm going to cover with you what the general agenda is and kind of what the game plan is to move through this agenda. First, though, in addition to thanking you all for being here and stepping up to the plate in the last week and a half, we're having this meeting, but this is by no means the first meeting that all of us have had. I think everyone in this room have had multiple meetings, either with myself or Ashley or Carrie, to prepare for this day, to kind of try to pull together all of these conversations that we've had on how we're going to move forward and how we're going to transition at this point. And I want to extend a special thank you to Carrie. While we are happy for you in your next endeavor and the next chapter in your career, we're going to miss you, but I am personally very appreciative of you staying hooked here for these your 2-week notice and really going above and beyond to commit a number of items to paper and constructing what I'm gingerly calling the instructions manual on your department, and then also in helping train some of our existing staff to take over certain roles, and then also working with all of our third-party contractors on preparing for this meeting today. And the purpose and objective, as you see on the agenda today in this meeting, is a transition planning to assume interim roles and responsibilities to support permitting, code compliance, inspection services, and all related building and development services. In the next hour and a half, I want us to cover the following areas, and we're going to do this in a number of ways. I'm going to pull up these items. We're going to have a brief discussion about how we do it now with Carrie. We're going to talk about kind of best practices on how maybe we can do it going forward, either internally or with a third party. Those items include inquiries and pre-development meetings, permit intakes, record management and public information, permit processing and plan reviews, invoicing, inspections, building code enforcement, variance requests, plat, replats, and amending plats, noticing requirements, complaints, City of Austin coordination, and builder communications with our regulated community. If you see or think of anything throughout this meeting, again, this is a work session, so please, I want it to be a robust discussion. I want it to be roundtable oriented. I want it to if you think of something, feel free to jump in with questions, comments, those sorts of things. If you, in the course of the visit in the meeting, think that we've missed something that we need to cover, please speak up and let us know. and we'll have a few minutes afterwards to wrap up any of those type of items. Again, I want to kind of move quickly. It's very much an open dialogue with everyone, so jump in. But let's start with item 3A, inquiries, and we've tried to sort of roughly do this in an order of operations as projects would come through the door. So we're going to start with 3A, which is inquiries and pre-development meetings. Carrie, tell us currently what your process is.
So when someone calls with a question about how to pull a permit, what the process is to develop a lot, clear a lot, I try to start with them with a pre-development meeting and go through any nuances specific to our zoning code, our permitting, then talk to them about the permit, the application process, and what supplemental documents are required to go with that document specific to that application.
Okay, perfect. I want to open this up to open discussion, and for a lot of this, I'm going to lean on Kay Freeze a little bit. Obviously, if Rampage, Charlie, if you or your team have any comments, or if there's anything that ATS thinks is problematic, please, again, jump in. This is open dialogue. But I'm going to lean on Kay Freeze a little bit because we had a very long meeting yesterday where we talked through some of these items. Your task and homework to bring today was to kind of think through some of these questions and then offer some potential solutions for us to consider today. Doesn't mean that Kay Freeze would be the ones to handle that particular item necessarily, but help us facilitate this discussion and tell us what you came up with in terms of this inquiry and pre-development type meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. The workflow that you there we go. The workflow that you had asked us to prepare, just handed that out before the meeting started. That's got the different colors on it. So we didn't take that exactly in the order of number 3. We kind of took that in terms of like how the development process works, but that does that 3A that hits on the magenta.
Which is pause there, which is a good example. I don't. Certainly, speaking for myself, I don't know what I don't know. So if something's in not the correct order, please, jump in. So keep
Yes,
going.
sir. Absolutely. Thank you. And so, yeah, I think, thinking about that after the call yesterday, I think there's kind of 3 main levels of inquiries that the city can get. You're going to get inquiries that are building code related, where somebody's specifically asking about something from the IBC, which is not necessarily something an engineer or a city planner is going to be able to answer, but at least kind of knowing that. So that's one, do I need to have wind bracing in there or something like that? So that's a building code thing, and that's really going to be an ATS question. And so, in your process, you talked about, there's a window that exists where ATS is down here, I think, from 2 to 10. So yeah, that's going to fall on a staff. Sorry.
We have not talked about having ATS down here during a window of time. I think it was you all.
Okay, I was just referring to your document that you'd sent out. There's a comment in there about, if people have questions about it, then they can schedule something with ATS or.
And let me jump into council again. We're going to share this with council, so I'm going to have a little bit of a dialogue with them. It's a ghost along the way. We will occasionally be referring to this document. Again, I call it the how-to manual, but Carrie has prepared a document. So when we get to these types of points in the discussion, Carrie, if you'll let us know kind of what you've outlined in the how-to manual.
Sure. So I've outlined kind of that pre-development stage. As far as code-specific questions go, I try to have the applicant communicate those in writing if it's something that I can't answer, and I send it to ATS for a response. ATS is...
Okay, so pause there. So I'm a architect. I've got a question about either a building code question. So if it's a building code question, you're the point. So they email that to you. Ask for that in writing. They email that to you, and if you know the answer, you answer it out of hand. If you don't, you send it typically to ATS?
Sure. Yes. So, correct. So let's say somebody has a question about a driveway, and they want to know where they can place it and how they have to construct it. Some of that I may answer like your driveway per our zoning code must be 5 feet from the side property line. And they may say, well, how far space should the rebar be? That might be something that I call ATS and say, hey, what are best practices, or what does code say about rebar and driveways? That's how that would work if I didn't know the answer.
Yeah, a lot of times, you have like your run-of-the-mill questions from the homeowners or applicants, especially, homeowners, do I need a permit for a shed? Do I need a permit for a swimming pool? Do I need, all these different things? So a lot of those questions that come in that go through Carrie, it kind of develops kind of a library of questions. So there's a lot of things that, a lot of questions that come in that Carrie would just over time learn, and so she knows a lot of those answers, on the top of her head. But anything that's outside of that, I'm pretty accessible. Our team is. So.
Pause there. Does that email, does it go to Dondi? Who does that email go to?
So if it's something that's specific to an inspection, I will usually call Dondi. If it's something more for a plan review at the kind of the earlier phases, I would contact Rich Emerson, who's their building official, who does, I think he does all the commercial plan reviews, and then also oversees residential. Am I correct?
Yeah, he's our plan review department.
So let's save that a little bit for the plan review when we talk about it. But on these pre-development type meetings or the just general inquiries, like I sent one to you not too long ago of a young couple that I know who've lived in Rollingwood a long time with their parents have, and they just wanted to visit with you, like, hey, what do we need to do to build a new house?
Yep.
And so those sorts of really basic discussions, who would that go to? If you're not here, where does that go? Because in my mind, that's not an ATS thing.
Right. That would not be an ATS thing. I would think that would probably go to either internal city staff or
Let's
Brandon.
assume that doesn't exist, at least on the short term.
Okay. Or a planner who could familiarize.
So you got two to choose from.
Either Brandon or Bryce, who could familiarize themselves with our applications and ordinances.
And in my mind, it's more of a, I don't know. I can argue it round or square. Okay, let me ask you this question. Currently, who do you send questions to? So if it's a building code, if it's the International Building Code question, you're going to ATS.
Correct.
If it is hey, what does our ordinance say related to a circular drive having to be 35 feet apart? I believe that's what the ordinance says. Where does that question? So I email you and say, hey, I want to do this awesome circular drive in my front yard. How far apart do the two entrances have to be? Who would you send that question to?
Probably Brandon or Lauren. Lauren Winnick is doing our plan review.
Currently in plan review,
Correct.
K-Freeze is doing ordinance-related plan reviews.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and just as a general matter, my preference would be that any questions that come in that are require your input and analysis and decision making, that they go to this group, because any appeal from the decision is going to go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment, and I represent the Zoning Board of Adjustment, and I don't want Bryce making the decisions that are being appealed from.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because then you're conflicted, and then we're having to go get.
And I'm not technically conflicted, but I just don't want to put I don't want to put anybody in that position.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Okay, that answers that question then. Okay, so again, let's stay focused on inquiries and pre-development meetings. So, young couple comes in, they're standing here talking to Michaela. Hey, we just moved, my grandparents are about to sell their house, but we're going to buy it and we want to build a new house. Literally something that happened 3 months ago. Where is that intake? And then what is the next step?
Someone would need to provide them a copy of the application. That could be that's something that we could turn over to K-Freeze, copies of the applications, or something that staff could provide. And then
Okay, pause there. Ashley, what's your opinion?
I think if we have the list of applications and it's something that's clear, as if I think in your system of processes you kind of line out what applications are required. I think we could do it. We won't always have one person handling it all the time, though. It might be Michaela at the front desk. It might be, Desiree has to come out of her office and figure something out too. So I think potentially an easier, maybe a different filing system for us for the meantime would be helpful if staff was going to do it. And I think probably having those in-house is the best. And then if we just have a question on what application they should be getting, then we would pass that on to
I
Kate,
kind of
please.
feel like and we're going to get to a little bit of this when we talk about records management and public information. I feel like I'm comfortable having a lot of these the promulgated forms and applications, that sort of thing, live with our city secretary. I mean, those are official forms. They're document. Now, she would not be the one processing. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But in terms of where they live and how they get filed and how they get directed, I feel like that's something that I'm good with, and I'm getting a nodding of the head from Desiree. So, is that you good with that?
I think so. I think that makes the most
Mayor.
sense for
Yes.
If I can jump in.
Jump in.
Yeah, that was, kind of, sorry for giving us a wormhole on the IBC a little while ago, but kind of going through this list here, I think, that's kind of where the workflow is going. Definitely identify, is it an IBC question? Then we know to go to ATS, or identify, is this a residential or commercial project? And so I know the print's a little small here, but if you put on your
brought my
peepers there.
Yeah, I did.
Just identifying a few different ways that those questions could go. One, if it's residential, then staff could potentially walk the customer through the residential FAQ on the website. So you guys have some nice FAQs on there for commercial and residential.
Thank you, Carrie.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
It's a great website. So maybe you sent it to customer. Maybe, I work in Leon Valley. I know sometimes you're a little more sensitive with your voters, so hold their hands a little bit. Commercial community, all right, they've got professionals, so
Right.
the city, we shouldn't have to spend so much time with them. But residents, walk them through, hold their hand to the website, walk them through the FAQs.
And you're 100% right. And we're, can argue it both ways, but for better or worse, we're kind of a white glove community, and that's fine, and that's great. And we're going to offer that level of service to our residents and future residents. The thing that I guess I'm a little bit concerned about, and it's why I think that we always, what I don't want to have happen is us just totally outsource this so that when someone walks in like that, we say, oh, here's an email address to K-Freeze.
Yeah.
Just shoot them an email.
Yeah.
Because what that inevitably ends up being is a back and forth with you and the resident or future resident or builder that we have no visibility on and no control over.
It gets expensive.
And then it gets expensive quick, and we just turned the keys over and didn't even realize it.
Right.
And so we're not being good stewards of our tax dollars if we do that.
Yeah.
So we have to maintain some level of control and be able to manage that relationship.
Yeah.
And I'm struggling with how to do that because I want you to be able to ask those questions. And I think committing it to writing and getting an email in, that's the first line of defense. But then we're going to have to work with you all closely to if something starts getting out of hand, we got to figure out how to manage that.
Yeah.
And just to follow up on the website portion of that, the applications, and I will look to make sure that all of the applications are on the website, but all of the residential development applications and the commercial applications are on the website. And I built an FAQ page with graphics and everything. So I think that is something that a front desk clerk could direct them, just so that whoever's walking in has access to
Perfect.
that information.
So let me go ahead. Jump in.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think my experience, people like that, it's kind of like being at the grocery store. Where are the tamales? Oh, they're aisle 4. No, take me to aisle 4.
Right.
People like that.
Exactly.
So
in my mind, the way I'm seeing this transpire on the inquiries and pre-development meetings. Well, let me ask you about this. So a pre-development meeting. So there's kind of two types of pre-development meetings you do, right? There's the one that I just described, which is the 101, two people walk in off the street and just want to know, hey, how do we build a house here?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the most basic of pre-development meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other more official would be or I guess that's a pre-con. Maybe I'm getting pre-con and pre-development mixed up. Am I?
Yeah, I think you're getting them a little mixed up. One thing that I do, usually it starts with a phone call if somebody wants to explore a project, and then I provide them any documents they need, and then I try to meet with them before submittal to make sure that they've got their application, their res check, their manual J, any of that stuff, or at least if they send it to me, I try to follow up with a phone call. And that's kind of falls into that completeness check and permit intake element of it. And then once a permit's issued, that's when we have a pre-development inspection or meeting on site once they've got their permit. So.
Okay. So in terms of process, and again, and I'm not taking great notes here, but I assume we can go back and take some minutes on this. So here's what in terms of process for this item 3A, inquiries and pre-development meetings. I see those from an internal staff perspective, originating at our city secretary with Desiree. You're going to have hard copies of all of the applications printed out so that you can show them, in real time. Here's what you would need to do. You would, and jump in if any of this sounds wrong, you would direct them to the website. You would show them or tell them about the FAQ and encourage them to go through all of that on their own. And then you would encourage them to submit any remaining questions that they have to you, I think, via email, at which point you will help direct them to one of our 2 third-party contractors if they are specific building code related questions. You would direct them to ATS, and if they are more general questions or questions related specifically to our code of ordinances, you would direct them to K-Freeze. Now let's pause here. So I think we're good up to that point, right?
Yes.
And then that would all be email communication up to that point. Now, if there remains some sort of outstanding question that can't be handled via email communication, I would say that there is an option to have and I would say, because you're in San Antonio, correct?
Yes, sir.
So probably a face-to-face isn't necessarily, we can call it a face-to-face, but it's a face-to-face Zoom meeting.
Right.
And I would say that we probably designate a certain amount of time per week that we're willing to foot the bill for on these types of questions. And then once those time slots are filled up, we're done for the week with K-Freeze and those types of questions.
And I would just throw it out for discussion. Commercial projects, maybe there's a deposit that's put down. Again, that sensitivity towards your residents. If somebody's moving into this community, they're going to be paying taxes. That's kind of what they pay for, is that help down here. But, in my experience, land developers out of town, commercial projects that are coming into town, there's that. Where's the payback for that?
Yeah,
So
I'll be
something-
open to that. I would need to call on council to figure out if
Yeah.
that's something we need to change.
And we have a very minimal amount of commercial. Now, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that that's not going to change with the new comprehensive plan, but just in general, we have very
A
little
lot.
commercial
Yeah, and I
activity,
think-
and they're usually coming in ready to go.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, and we could manage that differently. I mean, that's the type. If we get a commercial something, I'm probably personally helping facilitate or
Cool.
figure that out, and then we can manage that a little bit closer. As a standing rule, if anybody comes on commercial, give us a call.
Sounds good.
Let us know.
You got it.
Okay, so does that make sense, Ms. Wayman?
Yes.
Okay, so up to that point, and then if there are remaining questions after we get the email correspondence, the bottom line is try to funnel this down, empower them to do their own research as much as possible, and then try to try to boil down what the actual remaining questions are, that we can then outsource on an email basis to get them answered. And we would, I assume, have a commitment to get those turned around in a relatively short order. Now, we need to talk about email addresses. Let's do that in a minute when
Okay.
we talk about records management. Okay, that's pretty clear. Is everybody good on that?
And the forms, all the forms, Carrie has them all online and fillable PDF, so, I mean, I'm fine with having physical ones here, but it would be very easy.
Yeah, I was just mainly saying physical ones so that you didn't have to invite them behind your desk to show. However you want to do that is your call. So if you want to do that on a laptop and however you want to do that, it's your deal.
And Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You know, there's, in Leon Valley, we had a thing, we set up something outside of My Permit Now, but like for garage sale permits and stuff like that, we actually, our IT guy set up a little portal for applying for garage sale permits. I don't know if maybe you guys could create like a little portal too. That way, again, it removes you from having to get kind of send the emails, because that can add up. So maybe y'all could have a little portal that, say you're not able to answer the question. Okay, well, you know what? Need to send it off, and then they input that into a portal.
So I think that's a great idea. I sort of had a similar idea with Ashley and Carrie earlier today. We're going to talk about some of it later on. I think that's a good idea. There are different levels of, I have different levels of freak out. My current level of freak
Interim
out.
services.
My current level of freak out begins in 27 hours. So I want to stop the bleeding and then do that. But I think it's a good idea. I just don't think it's a good idea for 27 hours from now. Okay. We good on 3A?
Yes.
3B, permit intake. This is very similar in my mind. Talk to me about permit intake currently.
Sure. So when I get an application packet, I get the application, the plans, whatever those plans are, any supplemental documents, all of that, which is outlined on page 2 or 3 of all of our permit applications. I get all of that information. I send an invoice to this person digitally so that they can pay that. I send a line item invoice of whatever fees are associated with that application. And I assign that project a permit number. And so I have a master spreadsheets list. I assign it a permit number. I assign it an intake date, a submittal date and intake date. I set that as pending if it's under review. Put in any relevant information. And then I distribute those plans to ATS, K-Freeze, ATS for building code review, K-Freeze for zoning and drainage, and then depending on the project, Westlake Fire Department for fire. They perform the reviews. They send any comments back to me. I distribute those comments to the applicant. If there are any questions regarding nuance of the code or how it's getting, generally interpreted, I answer that. If it's specific, I refer that either to Lauren or ATS. And then when all of that is done and I have approvals from each for zoning, for drainage, for fire, and building code, then I issue the permit.
Keep going.
If there is a redesign of plans, and that's not a comment, correction, update, but if for instance plans are designed not in conformity with the code and they have to do a redesign, I resend those plans to ATS, K-Freeze. It rarely has anything to do with fire, but fire if appropriate for re-review. Typically, if comments are generated by K-Freeze, they're generally something that's not structure related. They're not related to the building, and so I don't necessarily resend that to ATS. If it's just hey, I need to see your setback, or I need you to confirm what gradient you're using to calculate building height.
That
If
makes
they have
sense.
to
So
alter,
once ATS signs off, like, they're good.
tip,
Yeah.
95% of the time they're good.
Okay. Quick question I thought of when you were talking. So you reference sending those to Lauren as typically as your point of contact.
Yes.
Is that what still needs? So I guess this is a Kate Freeze question. Is that under this new sort of arrangement? Is that still your preferred method, or would we go straight to Brandon?
You want me to? Or no?
I guess would the city still be getting all the information and then distributing to us? Or,
Adjust your mic too, just so we pick it up. There you go.
I was just asking if the city would still be collecting all the information and then distributing to ATS, K-Freeze, or,
I would think that for the interim, until the city figures out how they want to fill the position, it would make most sense for them to submit that submittal packet to Brandon. And for Brandon to,
I see Desiree shaking her head. Yes.
So-
No, I think I agree with you. I'll let the professionals weigh in. I can go either way on it, to be honest with you, because we also, we're going to talk about noticing here in a bit. I mean, there's still a certain component of this that we're going to need to have on site. Again, K-Freeze, the planning office for K-Freeze is located in San Antonio. So somebody can't just pop in to San Antonio and review plans. And emailing and electronic submittal is not an option. That gets into proprietary stuff. So we still need to be able to provide these for residents to look at, but we've never allowed them to duplicate or make copies, right?
yeah, so oftentimes these plans are copywritten, and so when somebody wants to come in and take a look at them, I just pull them up on that screen over there and show them to them. So perhaps the email goes to a generic email folder that someone checks and just dumps them into the building files, because I've got building file folders, and then if somebody comes in and wants to see the plans for a particular address, it's
I mean, because that's the other, you've just hit on my major concern with just carte blanche submitting them to K-Freeze. Not that y'all aren't great. I think you do a great job. I think Brandon's going to do a great job. I don't, 3 years from now, the three of you may not be sitting right there, and I may have a totally different, feeling about the next three. And I may be different too. I mean, we all may be different, right? And so we got to think through what this looks like long term. And I have some real strong opinions about how we've done it in the past, and where we lost total control of records management. We've lost total control of how things are filed, where they're filed, all of those sorts of issues. And I just have a real heartburn of having something not come through here at least as a clearinghouse before it goes somewhere else, so that if it's not filed properly and we can't find it at a later date, it's our fault, not our fault because we didn't
right.
require our vendors to do it correctly.
Mayor, maybe if you would mind, I'll just run through the orange on
Please
here.
do.
And then, some of these things we can change staff out to KFA and different things. And so on the orange, just kind of took a shot at that. So, with anything, whether it's plating or any kind of application, completeness check, as Carrie mentioned, that's the most important part of the process, because it gives you the chance to reject it if necessary. So on here, I've got step 1, completeness check. Staff receives and reviews application for completeness based on appropriate checklists. So I know that applications have checklists, but maybe we could, create something a little bit more, maybe, I can come up, Bryce and I can come up, and we can do like some training sessions too, and kind of go through how we do that. We could do some mock submittals or save up submittals, so we can go through theirs. I'm confident completeness, I mean, you can get that down, so maybe it's about just setting up a checklist process for doing the completeness review, and then based on that, Really there's two things. You determine if it's incomplete, staff notifies the applicant of what things are incomplete. And then they've got, X amount of time. And if it is complete, then you proceed to invoicing and distribution. And so, when it comes to distribution, any set of plans is going to have the basic things. It's going to have the civil documents. It's going to have the architectural MEP. And it's going to have landscaping, zoning related stuff. So, if it's easier on y'all, you can just we can come up with a list of what things go to KFA versus what things go to ATS. And so, you can have an FTP, where you can put it into different folders, that might help. And then, here at the office, we get so much stuff, we've got initial submittal and our review that goes in there. You got submittal B, submittal C, just kind of a little system until y'all get process software. And so we can have an FTP that everything kind of works to that FTP. That way y'all can kind of, anybody that goes in, you can see the evolution of that process. And ATS has got their own. And so
Tell me, this is how astute I am. FTP is what?
a shared, it's a file transfer protocol. Sorry. Yeah, it's a shared portal for files.
And maybe we would use something like
PDF is as
SharePoint
good
right
as I
now.
Yeah.
PDF is all.
It's a,
If it ain't PDF,
Or,
I don't know.
or Google Drive.
Yeah.
Like it could go to
So it's that,
place
okay,
Yeah.
shared.
And-
I'm with you.
And I think, my experience, what gets tough, the initial submittal is tough, but what gets more tough is all the back and forth. Because developers, you got a civil engineer, landscape architect, nothing is ever submitted like one full construction plan, full set each time. You got this person submitting that, this person submitting that. So maybe something to consider is after that initial submittal comes in, then maybe each independent reviewer is coordinating with the applicant after that. That way you're not stuck in the middle.
Yes.
And
I'm
then,
fine with something like that.
And
'cause
we're-
I also don't want to eat up all of Desiree's time.
Exactly.
I want visibility, but I don't. But we can't. We have plenty of other things on her plate. So,
yeah.
and I don't know that she would always. In my mind, this is not necessarily something that always lives with her. But again, I'm focused on tomorrow.
Yeah, she's the gatekeeper, but not the project manager.
Right.
And so we're kind of the project managers for that. So it's up to us to manage those files, keep them organized. And then, when, say, Lauren's done with drainage review, she's the engineer, she issues an approval letter based on, kind of like cities do. Cities, your public works department will review a TIA. They issue their own little approval letter. That doesn't mean the planning department's done with it, but public works is. So she issues an approval letter, goes into the FTP. So that way, Desiree knows, all right, I checked that one off the list. And then say zoning submits their approval letter. ATS gives their approval letter.
And let me ask this now that I know what FTP means. I just say the cloud. But how hard is that? So you have a filing system now, and I don't want to get, records management is next. So let's kind of talk about it as well. You've got a really solid filing system currently, electronic filing system currently, and that is based on property address, as I recall.
Yes.
Is that where this FTP would? I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Is that where the FTP would live, or would your filing system? Would we? I'm trying to understand how, from a logistics standpoint, where would all of that live?
So I would think for the FTP, that would be separate, and then when the project was completed, those files would get dumped into the city, like into my filing system, kind of at the end, or once they're under permit.
Okay.
Or
And so, okay, I got that. And does this exist today? Again, I'm on a 27-hour timeline here. How hard is it to set up this shared folder system?
so that could be set up. Digio could set that up really quickly in a 27-hour time period, and then any emails. Let's say the new email address was building permits at rollingwoodtx.gov. Any of those plans that came in there could just be drag and dropped into the FTP, it would be accessible by the different vendors that we work with.
And you could tell us and ensure, and I'm sensitive to this because if you saw my shared folders with my office staff, you would understand why I'm sensitive to this because I'm terrible at it. You could share with ATS and with K-Freeze exactly how you save your files so that it is easily dumped and identified and searchable to go into your filing system. So I don't, once it, if there's a project that's been going on for a year and all of this back and forth and it's all in this one, we need it to be able to very cleanly and easily get dumped into your filing system and be filed the same way.
So realistically, somebody's probably going to have to rename them because I know ATS has their own way that they. Don, do you want to jump in?
Well, I just had a question. You're using My Permit now?
No.
Was that I think I heard that at one point in time about possibly doing.
We
My
had
Permit?
talked about My Permit Now and we've talked about Inco, but we're not using either of them at the moment. I think realistically, because you all kind of have a way that you save things on your side. K-Freeze kind of has a way that they save it. Realistically, somebody's going to have to, once that project's under permit, grab all those documents, rename them, which isn't hard
Well,
to do.
and honestly,
put 'em
really
in the
what I
file.
thought is that there would be one master file. Like there would be a 4907 Southcrest Drive file,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of their stuff goes into that file, and then you just drop and drag that entire file, and that's your first. That just goes as a file, as a copied file into your system here.
It's also easy to accidentally right-click, delete. Oops, what happens to that?
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that gets tough about a master file, especially when you have different consultants, is, because we're going to be looking at the civil plans, and then ATS is going to be looking at the architecture plans. So, in a perfect world where we can trust everybody, city can say, all right, give us one comprehensive set of CDs that's got the most up-to-date architectural plans, civil plans, and everything, and you're trusting that final set that you get that gets the stamp is the individual one. So sometimes people just do that. My experience, what I've done is, okay, I treat each set of plans as a different document. I got my civil plans, I got my architectural plans, and they're approved. The architecture plans usually have landscape, and so that way what you got back. The last thing, that last set of civil plans that Lauren reviews, when she says approved, that document's memorialized. We're not trusting them that the final bigger one has that last set that she approved. So it gets tough when you're asking for that final set, and it takes, like Carrie was saying, but the safest way to do it is treat them separate and then compile them at the end.
Yeah, especially if, like, say, for example, you and us and you were trying to look at the same document at the same time.
Yeah.
For something on it conflict.
You got to send them back again. If that, it's okay. We got to look at it one last time, make sure it's what they said. But if you know that you approve that civil plans, you can check that off, upload, it's stamped, it's good. So
Okay.
not clean, but it's the safest.
How quickly can we come up with the checklist, the appropriate checklist for completeness?
It's on the second page of all the applications, the building applications and stuff. So all anybody would have to do is copy and paste that over to it.
Okay, so in terms of
Extract that page.
3B, for us to have clarity on what our process moving forward, so we're going to come up with an appropriate a checklist that we will literally check off to check for completeness, and we'll do that here, probably with Desiree. And then once it's determined to be the packet, the submittal packet is determined to be complete, then she is going to email that completed packet to both K-Freeze and ATS at the same time on the same email, and that will go to K-Freeze. It will go to both Lauren and Brandon, and ATS it will go to Dondi.
It'll actually, for plan review, it'll go to Jamie Lanka and Catherine Kano is who I submit to.
Confirmation on that, Donnie, is that right? Okay. We'll go back and listen to all that, but that's, okay, so then we'll have it in, complete, back out to ATS and to K-Freeze. We don't need to copy, we don't need anything to you guys at this point, okay? Does that sound good to everyone for permit intake? Did I miss anything? Oh, I did miss something. So that's the process. In addition to that, though, to prepare for this, we will work with Digio to set up the FTP so that, so I guess it's emailed. How does that work? It's emailed. There's a link to the shared drive or the shared folder.
So one way you might want to do it would be to have Desiree just add the files to an FTP and then send
That's how we do it.
send
and that
the
way,
link
Yeah.
to ATS.
and that way, when
and
she
Brandon.
does the original, when she saves that original packet,
Mhm.
she can do it in a way that will mesh with your filing system at the end.
Yeah. So then once all the reviews are in and everything, and we go to extract those files to put them in our records management system,
Boom.
then they can be
Just right
Yeah.
there
labeled
correctly. Yeah.
and then
Okay.
put it.
You could have your directories all set up the way you want them, you know,
Right.
like submittal A, submittal B, submittal C, final record set, you know, and then so
Will you, okay, so looking at Desiree, are you good with what we're talking about? Oh, okay. We'll have to put, yes. And so get with Carrie and make sure that we understand how she labels things. And then get with Brandon, if y'all would get together to do that, what you just described.
Yeah, the
as-
hierarchy.
As your suggested way to save those.
folder hierarchy. Yeah.
And then,
Yes, ma'am.
then that link will go to you, to both entities, and then Desiree's out at that point.
Sir.
And later you'll come back,
Yep.
but at least if it's all in there, we can do an annual, actually pause there.
Yep.
Put on our Gantt chart to do an annual, annual review and
We put the reviews directly into
data dump from the building development FTP into the internal city electronic filing system.
Okay.
Sorry, internal housekeeping. Okay, good on that?
So,
Carrie,
you
go
know,
ahead.
we're talking over here and having a question about what the best process may be for, once we've reviewed it and we're ready to return it, do we return it directly to the applicant individually, K-Freeze and ATS, or is it funneled through the city?
Somebody's going to have to generate the permit document itself.
So let's save that question for D, which is permit processing.
Yep.
Is that cool? Because right now we're just intaking. I mean, I know we're going slow, but I think we're working through some issues that we should pick up the pace here. Okay, so we've intaken the permit, we've gotten it out. Now let's talk, and we've kind of covered C also, records management and public information. So through this FTP process, we've kind of covered that. Why don't you just run through for the record how you do that filing? We've kind of already covered this, but is there anything in particular we need to keep in mind regarding records management and public information?
Yeah, so the way files are stored here currently, we have an address folder that's got every street has its own folder, and then every property on that street is anything building development related is filed in there by the street name and the number and then the permit number and then whatever that document is. So
pause there. In my mind, this FTP that we just talked about on intake is a mirror image of that system, so that
yep.
that's what lives there, and then when we get ready to move it, it's just drag and drop.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I have it set up currently is I also have a current folder for everything that's currently under permit, and then a pending folder for everything that I've intaken, distributed, and is not actively under permit. So maybe it's in some various stage of review. Maybe they sent all the documents and then they decided to wait. So I've kind of got this pending folder going.
And I think what I think we're saying is that basically that pending folder would be going away, and that would be what this FTP.
Precisely.
Okay, perfect.
As far to get a little broader into records management for a minute, anytime somebody wants to file a public information request, I go to those address folders. Also, ATS has their own portal where their inspection records live. Not all of those inspections have been ported over into our address files because they have such a great organizational filing system for inspections. So if somebody comes here and wants to, if they file public information for inspections, you will want to check the city records and you will want to check the ATS customer portal. So we'll need to set somebody up with an account that has access to those inspection reports, or go ahead and pull them all over. As those projects go, they accumulate, and at the end, those get pulled and filed with a certificate of occupancy or what have you. But you'll want to make sure to check both of those. So.
Okay.
Mayor.
Anything more on that?
Dondi, how quickly can ATS set up? Do you know how quickly they can set up new users with access to your inspections portal?
It takes usually 24 hours, but
Okay.
What happens is that our IT person, when you go online to our website and you go to register, it asks for information, and so what happens is that our IT person, Will Goodry, will validate that person to make sure that it's all doing it correct, because we don't want any Joe Blow off the street just trying to act as a city person.
Okay, great. So then in terms of to-do items for 3C, we've talked about setting up the I've already forgotten what it is, the shared drive. The shared drive in a mirror image to the current filing system, and working with ATS to get additional users signed up for the portal for public information purposes. And then I assume ATS is sharing in real time with the regulated folks, with the contractors. You're sharing with them in real time whether they passed or failed the inspection.
Yeah. Just so it's pretty hard to sneak in and out of the city without the contractor finding you. They know pretty quick. But yes,
Yeah.
electronically they know pretty fast.
Okay, but that doesn't come back through you currently.
So what happens is an inspector goes to perform an inspection. They typically leave a sticker for the contractor that shows they passed, green sticker, red sticker. Within 24 hours, I get a copy of that report, and that report is on the portal. So if I go in and if I go into the portal and I type in 4701 Timberline Drive, I can see every inspection the ATS has performed for that property and their plan review.
Okay, hold that thought, because we have inspections coming up in a minute.
Okay.
I want to talk more about that in a second. Okay, anything more on records management and public information? Okay, we're moving off of that one then. I want to go back real quickly to permit intake 3B. Just for the record too, there's a timeline associated with those, right? It's 45. Is it a 45-day timeline? Once they submit.
Yes, so there's a 15 to 45 day timeline, but that is for the building official to act. That doesn't, you could still be under review if the building official is acting on it.
So would we be satisfying our initial requirement with the checking of the boxes and the notification to ATS?
Sure. So let me talk about the city's requirement for noticing of surrounding neighbors. So we have a,
Let's do that in a little. I've got that coming up.
okay, well, it's part of intake.
It is? Okay,
Yes.
go for it.
So when I intake those documents, our ordinance requires that depending on whether a notice is hand delivered or mailed, that there's a public review period of 15 to 18 days, 18 days if those notices are mailed. I allow those mailings to go out the day after I get a set of plans intaken, so that review period is running in conjunction with the review, so that if a neighbor comes in and wants to see plans, or they know of something that they're concerned about, we have that at the early part of the review process, rather than us sitting on an approved set of plans for 15 days, which is how it was done in the past.
Okay, so it's important for us to run that noticing requirement simultaneously up front with that intake process.
Yes. Now, the city does not do the noticing ourselves. It's the
Right.
responsibility of the applicant to notice those neighbors, and they return to me an affidavit that says I have done this.
Okay, so pause, Brandon.
With the city of New Braunfels, we have a system with plats that I think could work for this as well. So, they get plats in the door, and they send those plats to us, and we've got 3 days to go through and rip it to shreds, check and see, does it have everything that's in it? And we get it back to them within 3 days. And if it's complete, and they let the applicant know your plat's complete, you're going to keep going to the commission in 30 days. And if it's not complete, then it totally gets rejected. And so maybe something to think about is we get the application in, we do the completeness check within the first 3 days. And if we accept it, then they're notified, your application's been accepted, please proceed to do the noticing. And so maybe,
When you say application being accepted, though, is that similar to, so Desiree does a check, she checks the boxes, hey,
Yeah.
this looks complete, then it goes to you, and you're confirming, yes, it is complete?
No, so the way it would potentially work is, say Desiree gets a package and, it's only got the architectural landscape MEP plans in it, and there's no civil documents, and the code requires civil documents. She's going to send them an email back and say,
Not complete.
it's not complete, we're not accepting it. And, and then, kind of percent to like 245, I guess, or.
So how complicated is your initial plat filing review for completeness?
I'm sorry, are we talking about plats?
Well,
we kind of got onto plats,
he
and
was
then we
talking
got
about-
onto building permits.
Yeah, no, I
so-
get that. And so I apologize, Mayor, but I have to leave at 2:45. But
That's fine.
I do have some.
We're
I do
recording
have some-
it, so you can
okay.
listen to it
All right.
later.
All right. Yeah, well, that's good. But I do want to ensure that we're not putting a burden on, and I'm sorry if I'm sort of stepping over any lines, but I want to be sure that our completeness checks are not overburdensome on our city secretary with respect, especially with respect to plating issues, because sometimes those can be, they require an expert, to review those for completeness. I also want to make sure that we're not missing our timing on our completeness checks with respect to our plating and this is being recorded, but how can I say it? We need to ensure we're in compliance with the new regulations, statutory regulations with respect to plating. And then our 15 to 45 day review for building permits. Those I want to make. I have concerns, not concerns necessarily. They just need to be. We need to make sure we're touching on them. And then to be clear, our laws give, our ordinances give property owners the right to review these plans, but they do not give them the right to dictate changes to.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure everybody
Correct.
knows and
So,
understands.
Charlie, thank you for bringing that up. And so, as we go through the different colors, so we're, at the orange. So I think on the building permitting, there aren't as many statutory things. I mean, there's 245, but there isn't this 30-day shot clock. So my initial thinking on that was for a building permit, if we've got good checklists, maybe objective criteria, Desiree can do that.
Right.
For building permit completeness, and if it's good, then we let them know. Okay, put this specific notice that Rollingwood does. It's not required by state law. Okay, and then if it's complete, then you route it out to the reviewers through the FTP. But yeah, totally with plats and with like variance requests, the thinking there is that she gets it and she sends it directly to the appropriate party. Like New Braunfels, she doesn't even worry about looking at, okay, whatever they gave her, if it's junk, it's our job to figure that out within 3 days.
That,
And
and
then-
so that's, and we are totally off now, but I know you've got to leave, so I'm going to bring this up.
Yeah, I
'Cause
apologize.
that's okay, but I want your thoughts on it before you leave, because my thought when we get down to 3H and I would be for exactly what you just said, Brandon, for variance requests and plats, replats, and amending plats, that the intake would transpire at the city secretary, and then she would send it directly to
Yeah, hot potato. Here you
hot
go.
potato to your shop.
Variances, yes. Plats,
Cool.
replats,
I-
and amending plats to their shop.
Okay.
I would
Well, variances
I would
need to go
think-
to both.
Yeah.
I would think that you would want variances to go to K-Freeze and plats to go to you all. Am I not? Am I?
I'm
inc-
fine with that. I have no
Okay.
problem with plats.
I would think you all would want to be out of the variance.
Well, I don't want to be.
process.
Well, I need to review the variances from a legal perspective, right? I need to know
Right.
they're coming in. I need to. I need
Sure.
to. I need to know before the actual hearing date. I need all that needs to be coordinated, but variances definitely need to go to me, and to them.
Okay.
With
Yes, sir.
respect to plat review, we can sort that out. With respect to how that works
Okay.
Yeah.
from a process standpoint.
Sure.
Yeah, for variances, definitely that. I think treat that maybe like treat K Freeze like we're the planning director, like in Leon Valley, and then we write up the staff report. We're the big mean guy that makes some recommendations on facts of finding. We give a report, send it
Yes.
over to you guys. You get a chance to review it and say, Brandon, are you crazy? Whatever, and then
Well, I
everybody
never
goes
say
into
that.
which happened quite. No,
And I'm fine as long as there's that order of operations. What I'm not okay with is that we asked Desiree to send it to 2 places, and then 2 places do the.
And we have
this,
yes, and
you
that's
know.
not going to happen here, Mayor, because we have 2 different sets of responsibilities.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Can
Okay.
I ask also process-wise, is this something similar to like public information where you can say you have one place you're allowed to submit these and that is when the shot clock starts? Like if it's a public information request, we can designate this is the place you have to send them, this is the email. It's not considered received until it's,
Good question. So with respect to variances, there isn't a shot clock associated with it. We don't have to worry. We don't have to worry about that unless we've got some timeline in our code that I'm unaware of, which we can check and verify and
Okay.
sort out. With respect to plats, I'm not sure how our ordinances read, but hopefully they read. We have that we review it for completeness, and then we don't then. Once we say it's complete, that's when your shot clock starts. And so it shouldn't start when it's turned in to the city secretary. It should start after K-Freeze says, your application is complete. We have everything required to review for purposes of compliance.
Right, because at that point we haven't even taken a fee yet. We don't take the fee until we determine it's
I was
complete.
going to bring that up, but that's my next question. But I assuming you're not even taking a fee until after that review for completeness is complete.
Correct. I
Okay.
don't accept payment until the completeness review is correct as kind of another stop gap for
Is it-
completeness.
is that
And
helpful?
the shot
Yes.
clock.
Okay. Sorry that I took us
Oh,
down
w-
several
That
rabbit
was my
trails
fault.
there. Yes, it was.
I'll take total blame for it. But I think it needed to be sorted out.
Okay. We'll need to go back and think through some of those timeline issues, but, okay, so now moving back, we're gonna recover some of this in a minute. So 3D, I'm gonna try to pick up the pace here. Permit processing and plan reviews. Again, so we've got the permit, it's been taken in. I think we've actually pretty much covered this, haven't we?
Well, we didn't cover the invoicing part.
We're good, that's E.
Yeah.
We're doing
Oh,
this second.
sorry.
So anything left on permit processing and plan reviews? So we've
Nope.
gotten an intake, we've checked the boxes that it's complete.
Yep.
We've gotten it back out to our contractor, or to our contract third parties.
Yes.
All right, so we're good on 3D. Now 3E, invoicing. Okay, it's complete, it's out. They've weighed back in and said accepted. I have both, are both of you saying accepted?
So invoicing happens at 2 stages. First is the application invoice. So the money that you have to pay so that we've got money to pay them. And then there's invoicing once the approvals are done and you're invoicing for inspections. Or if there was some crazy drainage thing that had an overage, we would invoice for that. That doesn't really
So is there,
happen very often.
are there really 3 times that you invoice, because you do it at the end also to true up your?
Correct.
Okay.
So what invoicing for the application fees is going to have to happen with permit intake in some way. I don't know.
Got it on here.
Yes, jump in.
So jump to, or go to the orange, and then go to 1, and then the last bullet. So yeah, completeness check. If complete, proceed to step 2. So then step 2, just taking a shot at this. You guys tell me what you think. Invoice and distribution. So if it's complete, staff assesses the fee and invoices the applicant. And so if there's no review required, like some trade permits, those types of things, then staff just issues issues the permit, like a demo permit or
Yep.
just a little electrical permit. So if a review, and I think I missed out the word review. So if no review is required, Desiree assesses the fee, they pay the fee, you get your permit. And then the next step is inspections. But if there is a review required, then staff proceeds to put everything into the FTP and send out the email and let us know.
Okay. Does that sound like a doable process to you?
It does. One person needs to be handling invoicing,
Okay. I agree.
and then one person needs to be at the end of the month, the first day of the next month, taking all of those invoices and providing them to the finance department.
Okay. Ashley, are you okay with this process on the short term?
Sure.
I will say, for the record, thank you for stepping up, Desiree, and I think that she's perfectly capable of handling this, but it is not my desire to turn our city secretary into our building development office. And that is the road we're headed down. So
At this moment.
at this moment.
Right here.
And again, for the next 27 hours, that's the only road we have before us. But so I'm saying that publicly, and I'm saying that to you. I know this is not anything that we discussed with you, but I appreciate you stepping up.
Surprise!
And I want you to know my opinion.
Other
on-
duties as assigned.
Yes. Yeah, other
And-
duties as assigned. So I do want you to know that I'm appreciative, and I understand what we're asking. So
And for the record too on this, and for continuity, when we do have another solution, I will have an email address that will be specifically Desiree for building stuff. So we'll have
yeah,
maybe
and to
some
be
kind
honest
of-
with you, I would like to not call it Desiree for.
Right.
I would like to call it
Here.
the thing, so that if we do have a different solution at some point, that's very easily reassigned.
Right.
So it's us just saying, you're no longer in charge of checking these boxes and checking this shared
No,
file. Now
it's-
you are, and there's we don't have to at a later date reassign credentials and do all those sorts of things.
Right.
I almost put permit technician on here instead of staff, just to make Desiree feel like, oh, it's a
But
future
yeah,
person.
it's like if y'all need to reach Desiree about not building, it's her email, so that way she has that. If you need to reach her about building stuff, there will be a special email. That way it lives with whoever eventually is doing this. We transfer the box and the email box, and we're good.
Okay, talk to us specifically about okay, I agree with everything you've said. I agree with the timeline on how or when this invoicing happens. What program or what platform do you use to invoice? Is that difficult? Does that require some other credential? Like, what is that?
Sure. So I use authorized.net, and I have credentials. Ashley and I have credentials, and we can set up
Is this in
additional.
your how-to manual as well?
It is.
Okay.
It's in my how-to manual. I took little screenshots and highlighted it of a step-by-step of
Oh,
how
I saw
to.
those. Is that what
Yep.
that is?
Yep.
Okay.
That's what that is. So it's a step-by-step of precisely how to generate an invoice for someone. Once I have their submittal packet and have assigned them a permit number, I go to authorized.net. I create an invoice to whomever the applicant is. That could be a property owner, it could be a builder, it could be a permit expediter, which is often for these bigger projects, a builder, whoever it is, whoever wants to assume the responsibility of paying that bill. I send it to, I input their name, their email address, the property address, the permit type, the permit number, and then I issue an itemized invoice to them. So I'll say application fee for demolition, $600, pre-demolition inspection, $75, post-demolition inspection, $75. New residential construction, $600 plus our area multiplier fee, plus our drainage review fee, which is $2,000. Send that to them. Certain applications, the inspections are included at the time of application, and certain ones are not. So demolition and trade permits, it's a application inspection all in one. Application fee for demolition is $600. There's 2 inspections, a pre-demo meeting and a post-demolition inspection. All inspections are $75. Send that. If it's a situation where there's a review period, so new construction, remodel, addition, there's the initial application, and then the inspection fees are assessed afterward, because I don't know until ATS has done their building code review necessarily precisely what inspections are going to be required. I know certain things are going to be required, such as a pre-construction meeting, a CSI inspection, a building final, but there may be specific inspections, generally a water sewer yard line, but the property may or may not have gas. So that may be an inspection that gets assigned. So I wait until all the permits are approved and I'm ready to issue the permit. I send an invoice for the inspection fees. Once that is paid, I generate and release that permit document.
Okay, I'm gonna move us along
Okay.
through invoicing, but here's the deal, because as the more you've talked, the more I've gotten worried about this particular section. Not worried, but there's a lot here, and there's a lot for us to know internally of how much to charge and who to charge and when to charge and all of those sorts of things, and I am passionate about keeping that in-house.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a part of this puzzle that was outsourced before, and I have some real concerns about it.
Yep.
So I think it's important to us to keep this billing and intake of dollars internal.
Yep.
So I know we've already got a meeting scheduled tomorrow between the 3 of us to wrap all this up. So let's, in that meeting,
Okay.
cover this invoicing piece a little bit more in depth.
Okay.
Okay, I'm moving on to inspections. We've kind of covered this. This seems pretty straightforward. But let's talk about how you do this now and how we can move forward with it.
Yep.
And this is real nuts and bolts of like the contractors or you calling in the inspections. Talk to me about that.
So once a permit's assigned and they call in an inspection, they call, email, or text me. They do that. My cutoff time is 3 p.m. ATS's cutoff time is 4. That gives me a little grace period if somebody comes in at 3:10 and wants to call it an inspection for the next day. I email those inspection requests to the ATS scheduler, and they schedule those inspections for the next day. When I do that, I put the property address, whether it's residential or commercial, and the type of inspection requested, and I send that to them. Their inspector comes out sometime the next day, performs the inspection, and then typically within 24 hours, I receive an emailed copy of the inspection report, and that report is available on the portal to view.
Yeah, absolutely. And got all passionate about the inspection checklist because that's one that gets tough. But before I go through the green, Mayor, can I circle back around real fast to the review process, just in terms of what happened, the different reviews, like after the initial one, like subsequent reviews?
Sure.
And just make sure everybody's on the same page with that. So my thinking on this was that, yeah, you've got 3 main reviewers. You got ATS.
Is your mic on? Yeah.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mayor. You got ATS for building, and then you've got KFA for drainage, and you got KFA for zoning. So those are your main 3. So my thinking is, again, like I mentioned, Desiree's the gatekeeper. She opens the gate and closes the gate. But the reviewers are the project managers. So ATS has their own portal, right? And so I wasn't really thinking about that when I wrote this. So since they have their own portal, maybe the in between, you know, say you've got somebody that needs 3 different iterations because it's a mess or something. Maybe they're using their own portal that whole time, but in the end, then they put the final reviewed plans with their final comments. They put that into the FTP. That way, Desiree has no.
So I mean, I don't, Dondi, I'll let you weigh in here, but I only use their portal for inspections.
Okay, so then they use the FTP for the plan review during the process. So portal is just for inspections.
And they have their own FTP
Okay.
system for whatever their plan reviewers, however they.
But
cook
Donnie,
the
could you,
sausage.
could you all use our shared FTP? Or,
We.
I mean, you could do your own internally, but when it comes time to be done with it, you could put it in ours.
You mean just the plan review portion, or that and inspections and everything?
The plan review part. No, leave the inspections on your,
Gotcha.
yeah.
I'm sure they could, when they get done with it, they can upload it.
Okay.
The way they do it now is I email their plan reviewers the permit application documents. I either send it to them in an email or I send it to them with a link to a Dropbox if it's the files are too big. And then when they're done, they send me back the plans that are stamped with their plan review.
Cool.
So
So
that
it'd really
could,
just be, instead of an email, they're just putting it into the share.
exactly. They could
But-
just put it there if they're willing to do that, or email it to
Yeah.
Brandon or.
Oh, and then you put
But
it.
ATS, y'all are fine basically acting like an extension of staff during your review process. You're fine not having to send it back and having Desiree or staff like you, okay, first submittal's denied, fix this, and if they have questions, they're going straight to you and it's like staff doesn't exist. You guys are cool with that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, as far as the plans, I mean, with if you have a place to put them, that's great. You know, so we can use that. I mean, for most of the jurisdictions that do not have a portal, you know, to put the plans, we use Dropbox,
Okay.
and we just do a shared file and
Okay.
go back and forth out of that.
Yeah. And ideally, at the end, y'all are putting the final documents in the FTP, so Desiree can take the final architectural plans, all right, and then she can grab our final civil plans or our final zoning plans, and then, but yeah, and that answers the question. So we're not, we're not managing ATS at all. We're on the same level as ATS. And then fire department too, right? If it's commercial. Or,
So there, if I can chime in real quick, there seems to be a missing piece of this that we're not talking about, which is who's actually managing the reviews and the project as if they were Carrie. Because that's an integral piece to all of this that if you don't do, you're going to be chasing parts forever. You won't get full submittals in. You'll have different people issuing comments at different times. You'll be getting things back in. You may even run into a situation where somebody's already issued comments and they've resubmitted before the other person's already issued comments.
Yeah.
So you need this, that piece that you need is to assign someone this role to say, hey, once it's all in there, and it sounds like Desiree's already got more than enough to do, so it may not be her, right? She's getting it in there, but who has that technical knowledge to know what the pieces actually look like and just says, hey, did I get comments from so-and-so? Yes,
Yeah.
put them all together, push it out, right? Just that actual management of the permit through the process.
Yeah, and that's, quite frankly, that's the difficulty here, and we're not going to have anyone doing. I mean, I agree with you, and I see the problem, and it's going to be a problem, and it's just going to be a problem that we're going to have to manage, do the
Yeah.
best we
Yeah,
can.
I mean, so it's not a big time sink for somebody on the review side. It is a common thing that falls into that planning realm of pulling those pieces together, and that is something that, you know, for clients that we do on-call review for, that's one of those pieces that we do is, hey, make sure the city engineer consultant has submitted, do I just have everything?
Yeah.
And then push it out.
and I think that was, and that's, yeah, Bryce. I mean, that's the hardest thing. So I don't know. And what do you, I mean, that's, let me know, because you and I have the same background generally. So if you, my thing is, if you explode the construction plans and you explode the associated documents, and you take it apart, and you've got, you know, because we don't overlap with architectural plans. We look at a site plan, but in terms of like the innards of the building and the IBC stuff, we don't look at that. And so the thinking is if you pull it apart, if you got the civil over here, they're not looking at civil. So the civil is kind of running its own development process. How do you think,
Yeah,
can you do
I
that?
think you're making it too complicated, Brandon. I think you just have somebody, everything that comes through has to have a review by those three people, right? You've already identified this stuff as building, zoning and engineering. So every permit that comes through has that been looked at.
Yeah,
And
no,
to assign somebody just to say, hey,
I totally
looking at
agree
what
with
comes
you, which
through.
is why we brought development in-house. I mean, 100%.
Yeah.
It's why we did what we did. Again, in 27 hours, it won't exist anymore. So,
I mean, I think that's something that if K-Freeze is interested in doing, they can probably do, since they've already got 2 of these 3 reviews that they're covering. It's basically, hey, ATS, are you finished with your comments? We're ready to send ours. Yep, sounds great. Send it all.
Well, and so again, I'm trying to think, how can it be automated? So that's why I'm thinking these approval letters are critical. And so, again, going back to the plating process, we manage the whole plating process for the city of New Braunfels, and there's different things to check off, like traffic impact analysis, drainage analysis, subdivision construction plans. We're not coordinating with those departments directly. We look in the folder. Did they, is there an approval letter from this particular entity? So that was kind of my thing, is like, all right, we've got a folder that she can be checking on and see, and all right, I got the approval letter from ATS in there, so she knows my building plan review is done. I don't know. I'm just this is.
and I now have a better understanding of what you're saying, Bryce. I agree, and I think to some extent, K-Freeze is who's going to be doing that. My struggle is that I'm trying to balance that eating up a lot of billable time.
Yeah.
It
will.
And it was gonna.
It will.
It should really only be a couple minutes.
I
I guess I don't know what would take so long to say, hey, you all finished both of your sets of review. I mean, y'all should already be coordinating on that stuff anyways. Since it's all
I
the
get
same
it, but
company.
you've gone. I mean, you know how these things go.
So- yeah, so I
when you're
manage
all of a
this-
sudden off of down a rabbit
Yeah,
trail.
I manage this for some of our clients, and all that I do is I send an email to the city engineer and say, hey, have you finished your comments on this?
Right.
And he says, yep, here they are. And then we just batch out, on their
Yeah,
letterhead,
sure.
they
If it's
send
a
out
yeah,
memos, and it's just,
absolutely.
here you
If
go,
the
it's all
answer is
together.
yep, here they are, that's 2 minutes. If it's nope, there's 5 other things that need to be done, and
Yeah.
4 people doing them.
It's just at least with plats, at least my experience, it's never there's going to be other conversations. So that's what gets
but
expensive.
I agree with
so,
the basic premise that we need somebody running.
Just to jump in for the time being, for the next week,
Yeah.
2 weeks, I would say that it should probably be K-Freeze, just
Cool.
getting
100%.
getting
Totally
ATS,
agree.
sending,
agree.
ATS does the review, that goes to K-Freeze. K-Freeze sends any of their comments. Because honestly, there's very, very little as with relates to building code comments. If there's usually one round, this is what it is. It gets fixed. That's it. They get their review timeline is 2 weeks. K-Freeze's is more like 4, so they can send that.
And this is and what we're talking about here is like a quick temporary fix till hopefully you guys get permit software. Because when you get permit software, that person kind of.
So I'm going to cut you off right there, Brendan. Software is not the solution to this issue, because it's an eyes-on issue that you need a human to do.
But it'll notify you when the reviews are done. It notifies
Okay.
her,
You
so
two
she's
argue
able.
about that later.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm not trying to argue.
I get it, but I'm just got to keep us moving. So let's go back to inspections. So who's calling in? So right now they call the inspection into you, and you call ATS.
Correct.
So moving forward, can we safely cut you or your position out and still be confident that this is going to work? Or you tell me how you envision inspection call-ins going.
I would say if ATS is open to it, an interim solution would be for the builders to schedule directly with the scheduler and copy the city. Copy Desiree, copy Ashley, just so that there's a record with the city somewhere, but just have it go to,
Pause there. So we talked about that other email address, so it's development at, or something like development at
Yeah,
Rollingwood.
right,
That would be who I think that they would copy. Anyway, continue. So,
that
So-
would be my solution, would
so
be for them to
builders
do
schedule-
it so that there's not a delay in,
Donnie, does that work for you guys?
Yeah, we can. We do run into a lot of situations to where the builder may not have his access to his email right when he wants to schedule something, so they'll try to call it in. But in those cases, what we could do is that once we get confirmation that we schedule, because we can send them a confirmation email, hey, you're on schedule, and then copy, whatever email address that you want us to copy, in those cases. But sure, we can definitely.
And and I want to make it as easy on the builders as possible, but I'm not overly worried. Like, if we say it's email,
Sure.
now you tell us how you want it, and then you're working with
Well,
us. Yeah.
Email's the easiest.
I'm
I
fine
like
with
the
it.
email so then there's a
I feel like there
written
needs to
record.
be since we're losing our point of contact, I think that an email.
However, at the end of the project, when you get down to the building finals, whomever it is can go into the portal and see every inspection that was called. So it's still really easy at the end to rectify any
Oh.
overages, because you can always go in at the end before you give a CO and say, oh, you prepaid 17, but you called in 22. I'm billing you for those extra.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
so let's, so the to-do items then on inspections will be, and we're gonna cover communication with the regulated community in a minute, but it'll just be letting them know, here is how you're going to schedule inspections going forward. They'll be directly emailed to ATS with an email copy going to this new address at the city.
Mm-hmm.
That should be good, right?
That should be good.
All right.
You're still gonna have some people call them in, and if whoever grabs the phone in the office can just email the scheduler, hey, can I get a wallboard inspection for 4701 Timberline Drive for tomorrow? That you're still gonna get those, whatever you do. So
And I'm fine, I'm fine letting our staff, Kayla, certainly, we've called these in.
We do that when you're out
When
for
I'm gone
a
anyway.
day. Yeah,
Yeah.
we can definitely do those. I wouldn't want them stopping for everyone, but if they get called in once in a while,
Yeah.
we can
Okay.
do it.
It'll be a process of learning too, because they'll keep calling in and says, well, we'll take it this time in the future, please do this.
That's where, that's how I think we need to train our staff to handle it. Okay. Building code enforcement. Let's talk real quickly on building code enforcement. Go ahead.
I have one question. I have a homeowner that I have to go
I understand.
meet.
Is there anything, so variance request is not gonna deal with you, planning is not gonna deal with you, noticing's not gonna deal with you, complaints not gonna deal with you. Actually, I think we're done with ATS. Anything else ATS related?
The only thing that I would say, and it is related to building code enforcement, is Dondi, is ATS open to, if we give you a short, I mean like 5 items to look at for inspections? Are you willing to get eyes on those things when you're doing an already scheduled site visit? So for instance, like you're going to do that wallboard inspection at 4701 Timberline. Can you also look to make sure that the permit's posted visible as you're entering the site, and then make any note if it's not?
Yeah.
Is that something that y'all have the bandwidth to do?
Yeah, well, we can just add that. I'll just have to educate my staff,
Okay.
That's great. And let me clarify for the record and for council members who may be listening to this at some point. Because to be clear, ATS is doing plan review related to building code. So International Building Code type building code issues. That is not to be confused with our local code or our code of ordinances review, which K-Freeze does for us.
Correct.
And so what you're asking ATS is, with your exit, there will be no one to be looking at some of those specific items related to our code at the site, correct?
Correct.
And so what you're asking ATS is if we came up with a very simple list of like, here are the top 5 things that we really need to make sure you're looking for, which is
Yep.
above and beyond what they have done for us previously.
Correct.
Because that's fallen on you. So,
I will add that I have a really good working relationship with the 2 inspectors who typically inspect here, and they're kind of aware. So when they see something, they usually call
they're
me.
kind
and
of calling you, hey,
they call and say, hey, this property,
Okay.
you might need to talk to them about picking up the trash or something there. And that's just personal relationship development.
And so the to-do item on 3G then would be for you to help us come up with that list of
5.
the greatest hits
Sure.
Yeah.
of what to look for.
Yeah, posting the permit, porta can, trash, container.
Those, yeah.
Yep.
Trash is a big one. Council may be going to adopt a construction fence ordinance, so a few little things like that. Thank y'all. Thank you for stepping up on that one. We appreciate
Thank you, Dondi.
That's pretty simple that my guys did.
Great. Thank you, and thanks for being here.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks. Y'all have a good day.
Okay, anything more on building code enforcement? I mean, that was kind of the main.
That's kind of the main thing. I mean, code enforcement, I have referred to the police department for the enforcement mechanism because the way I've tried to do is just calling and getting compliance. But when there's an issue where a citation needs to be written, I have referred that to the police department because it's an easier court process to move it through the courts if a citation is going to be issued, if the police department issues it. So that will more or less stay the same if somebody calls up here and there's a flagrant violation that can't be handled with calling
Okay.
somebody, then
And
they
I
can
will
handle
say,
that.
and Bryce, I'm kind of looking at you on this one. So there probably will be from time to time, with the absence of Carrie, and we might be splitting this a little bit between K-Free since they're doing kind of the code review, but there might be instances where we would need to visit with you guys on, how should we handle this? Is it what type of enforcement is available to us and that sort of thing. So this would be one of those instances where we might lean on you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Anything more on this?
Nope.
Any other to-dos other than the
Nope.
thing that we're going to get for ATS? Okay. All right, now let's talk variance requests and plats. So can you guys rehash, and we can go back and listen to the audio on this, but tell me again what was said earlier by Charlie that everyone other than me seemed to follow.
Sure. So variance request, somebody wants to request a variance, they have to submit their application, their letter, their fee, and any supplemental documents that are required by that. It's on the application. We can talk about that another tomorrow. But there's no stop clock for the variance on the front end. The only stop clock is once there is a hearing, the board must reach a decision within 45 days. So that is not, there's a notice requirement. You must notice 30 days prior to the meeting, 250 feet in all directions. And now we have a new requirement of posting a sign on the property not less than 15 days prior to the hearing. That is something that in the past fell to the city secretary's office of keeping, because the city secretary is posting those public hearings anyway. So
All right, question.
providing notice.
Do you have are any of these on your desk currently?
There's 2 variance requests going before the Board of Adjustment on May 25th.
Okay.
And the notice has already been provided and the signs have been posted as of today.
Okay. I'd kind of like to put a pin in these 2, and what I'd like to ask everyone involved, Brandon and Bryce. So this document that we'll kind of be working off of starting tomorrow, and we'll make some changes to it. This is helpful. Could we do a similar type of thing with this for variance requests and for plats, replats, and amending plats?
Well, first, that one's going to need some updating. I'm taking some notes.
Yes, yeah. I just meant the form and format. Because I feel like, so this is the development process. I'd like a similar type of flow chart for variances, and then another one for plats, replats, and amending plats. Is that possible?
I think it depends on doing variances in class, and then that person can probably come and develop that since that makes sense. So I think
How about Bryce, do you have the availability to do, I know that you worked with us on the noticing requirements and the ordinance updates. Would you be able to create some kind of flow chart or a process manual
yes,
for those two
I can
items?
create you an SOP for how to process a variance from a business process.
Okay,
for
if
the
you,
city.
if you could get us that.
Yep.
And then if, I have OCD and I need it to look like this. So he's gonna give you
Yeah.
what you need to put in something that looks like this. And now, then we're gonna have 3 of these, 1 for development, 1 for variances, 1 for plats. All right, cool.
And we have a noticing doc, like a kind of a cheat sheet we use here. A lot of things have changed, but the noticing I want like on its own separate thing, front and center, where it just, you know, lists out if it's a variance, here's the different noticing things we have to comply with, so we can check that first. And I know some stuff has changed since we made some code amendments, but newspaper notice.
And Ashley, I would
Local-
like you to work with council to make sure that we roll in all of those noticing requirements need to be reflected on each one of these 3 types of flow
Of these
charts.
guys, okay.
Yeah. And that gets us to 3J, which is noticing. And we've had some of those noticing discussions, but I think the to-do here leaving today is to work with council and anyone, and Carrie, if even maybe in
Yes.
her
And so
absence.
for the record, the notices for public hearing get done by city staff. Notices for permit application, for building permit application, gets done by the applicant.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And we just need to be clear. That's probably in the frequently asked questions also.
It is, and it also, we use, and when the applicants for a building permit are noticing, they use, I instruct them to use TCAD to get the mailing addresses. So, and that's how we do it, and that's required in our ordinance. We use TCAD, and then to get our 250 feet, I use Google Earth. Draw our circle from the lot, 250 feet, pull those addresses off TCAD, use the mailing address for whoever the property owner is for those notices.
But we provide that to them, the list of who they need to notice.
I
or-
do not provide that list to a building permit applicant.
Okay.
They have to do that. They have to generate the list. Now, if they have trouble, they want me to review their list, I will review their list, but it's on them to generate the list and provide the notice.
Yeah, and I would anticipate that we keep it like that.
I would
yes.
encourage you
Oh,
to,
yeah.
because it's a lot. Just doing the public hearings is a significant amount of
Yeah.
time. So,
Okay. Anything else on the noticing?
no.
I guess who are we going to have responsible for noticing, or is it whoever's reviewing those things? So the actual creation on the public hearing ones that the city staff traditionally does, is that going to be Desiree?
In the
generating
past,
those?
it was the city secretary.
Okay.
So when I first started and this was contracted out, PDG provided that list to the city secretary, and the city secretary with her assistant sent those notices in conjunction with her setting the hearing date
Okay.
or
so,
the meeting.
yeah, are you gonna be doing all of the creation of figuring out what's within the 250 feet?
We'll work through
I'll
that.
yeah, and I'll work
Okay.
with Desiree on that. I've
Perfect.
done a few of them, and we'll generate those notices.
Awesome.
And that's why I think it's really important to have those notices reflected on these sheets
Mhm.
so it's really just a follow the dots.
Yes.
When it comes time to do these.
Agreed.
Okay, anything else on notices?
Nope.
Okay, moving on to 3K, which is complaints. This is really similar to building code enforcement, but I'll just say you were good. Over a month ago, we kind of reworked. We reworked our complaint form.
Yep.
That we've had.
And we
on-
did not get to present that to council, unfortunately, at the meeting, but we did rework a complaint form and created an email address, code complaints at rollingwoodtx.gov, new form that is in place and just needs to be added to the website and have that email address get assigned to a specific individual.
Perfect. And so that's how, this one's kind of it's not easy, and it's an important one, but the to-do items on 3K are gonna be, getting that new PDF, fillable, PDF onto the website into a spot that can be located. And then we need to get that, we have the new email, is the new email address set up?
Yes.
So we need to make sure that dumps to a certain inbox, and then we need to come up with a designated staff person to check that, and probably need it to bounce also to maybe you or me even. I don't know. We'll work through that. We'll have it bounce to someone so that we can check it in real time, and then we need a designated staff person to be assigned to check that complaint once a day or twice a day or something like that.
And it's going to be really, especially now with me not being here, it's going to be really important that to get the word out on that, and that council, if they get complaints, are using it, or if they directing folks to use it, so that there's some tracking
Yeah, I'm not
for it.
inviting, by no means am I inviting a great number of complaints to be issued, but
No.
we do need to try to drive everybody to that central clearinghouse so that we can manage. It's a management issue.
It's a management issue. It's not a.
It needs to go to one spot and bounce, and we need.
Why couldn't it just be an email with complaints rolling with?
It is.
It is.
That's
Yeah.
what it is.
It's code enforcement, right? Code enforcement at rollingwoodtx.
Code enforcement at rollingwoodtx.gov. The issue is just making sure that they get filed in that way, and not just calls and
Yeah.
texts and,
All right, so we will
others.
educate everyone on that, but again, thank you for updating that form. Thank you for setting up that email address, and let's just get it advertised.
Okay.
All right, moving on to 3I, and I'm sorry, and I know I'm running late for another meeting. I apologize, but at least it's informative. This is very important for us to knock out. 3I is City of Austin coordination. So talk to us real quickly about at what point do you have interaction with the City of Austin, and what do we need to be prepared for going forward for that type of coordination?
Sure. So City of Austin, typically, I have very little interaction with City of Austin, but when there is on the applicant side a little bit of liaising that they have to do with City of Austin as it relates to Austin Energy and getting electrical service established, changed, meters pulled. So when someone has a new construction, pulls a new construction permit, they have to get a temporary power pole set, and then at the end of the project, they have to get a meter set. And at the moment, Austin Energy does not recognize our permitting process and procedures, and that's something that I was starting to work with them to change. But you have to, in conjunction with pulling your building permit for the city of Rollingwood, you've got to go to the city of Austin and pull a permit through them specific to electrical, so that they can set your temporary power, and then at the end do your meter.
And you're calling your inspections in just like you'd do with any other city.
Just like you would do with any other city, they do require certain inspections. So they require a UFOR ground inspection to be performed by their inspector. And that was something that, again, I was starting to work with them. Why can't we just roll that into ours? But for now, there is anything that includes the electrical meter and electrical service is provided by Austin Energy, and that has to be coordinated with City of Austin. The only other thing that I work with City of Austin on is when there's a change of address. They are the managers they oversee that for the county for emergency services. And so any change of address has to get filed with the City of Austin so that it gets updated in Google Earth and the emergency management system and 911 and all of that. So, and that just gets sent in a letter.
That's good information that I didn't know. Pause there. Add that to the chart, if you would. An annual update to City of Austin of any new addresses issued in the previous year.
Okay.
Yes.
Can I interrupt for a minute? I'm still kind of hazy on variances and plats,
Okay, hold
the
on.
process.
Okay,
Sorry, I
we'll
didn't
go
know.
back. Noted. Hold that thought. Anything else on City of Austin?
No, sir.
All right, good. I mainly just wanted all of that kind of on the record for posterity.
Sure.
Moving forward. We still have some work to do there, but, okay, last but not least, 3M, builder communications.
Mm-hmm.
So with all of this, there's a lot to digest here. We're going to go back through and probably do some minutes to this meeting. It's a lot to digest. And I think we've got some good takeaways and good to-dos. But all of that said, once we kind of finalize this, and we'll have our wrap-up meeting tomorrow to commit a final to-do list and a final plan, how do you recommend that we get this word out to our regulated community? I assume you haven't shared with everyone your departure quite yet. Do you have any parting words of wisdom on how we go about that?
Sure. So I have in the master permits list, which the city staff has possession of, I have the email address for the general contractor overseeing whatever project that is. I can work with Ashley to create an email blast that will go to everybody, and then there can be a bounce back email address for specifically to my email address for anybody who writes in, to just redirect that flow to maybe a new, building and development at rollingwoodtx.gov email.
Okay. That's perfect. If give that some thought as you lay your head on your pillow tonight on what that might look like.
Sure.
And let's tomorrow try to sketch out and get that completed. And I think cover some of the highlights too. Certainly, in my mind, the most important thing will be for their now communicating directly with ATS. But a lot of these builders build in Rolling Wood on a continuing basis, so we might want to roll in some of these other items too, related to some of the new interaction with Desiree, K-Freeze, ATS. Like, let's give them a little bit of. I don't want to go into great detail. I mean, it's
Sure.
been a very full 2-hour meeting, but let's try to give them a few of the highlights of the things that are going to change that affect their day-to-day
Sure.
stuff. Anything else on
No,
that?
sir.
Okay, we'll cover that tomorrow. Last but not least, as you talked about your master list, let's go back to that, and then we'll do a brief follow-up on your remaining questions on variances and plats. You are the keeper of the list.
I am the keeper of the list.
The Excel spreadsheet, and that is something we've talked about with council at length in the past. It's kind of the one-stop shop of an Excel spreadsheet that has all of your permits that are either pending or active and all those sorts of things, right? I know you've been working diligently on that this week and last week to get that up to speed. I know that you'll have that, and we'll make sure to get it posted before you leave tomorrow. But going forward after, well, now we're at hour 24 and a half, who should be the keeper and maintainer of that list? Because I know community members reference that list a great deal. Council members do as well. So how do you recommend? Does it live probably with Freeze?
It should live with the city. A copy of it should live with the city secretary, and it always has. When once we brought everything in house, it was on the shared drive, so it was accessible to everybody. As it is now, it's on the shared drive. Any staff member can pull that list up and take a look at it. In the past, a copy of that list was provided to keep in the city secretary's office, a physical copy of it that got updated every week. It also, I've been putting a redacted version on the website, and there are some records management points to discuss on that off record or in executive session with council, but that list a copy at least should be filed in the office of the city secretary. If in the interim, in these next couple weeks, K-Freeze is the one physically issuing the permits, then it should probably go to K-Freeze, and they should provide a PDF copy to the city secretary. So that so you don't get into a situation where this list, where you end up assigning the same different projects, the same permit number.
Okay.
So one person needs to be assigning the permit numbers.
Okay. Is that doable? K-Freeze?
Or it should be Desiree, and she assigns the permit numbers and she provides that to K-Freeze, which might be better.
We can, but again, that's more project management on our side. And I think, and also, in terms of issuing permits, I'm always recommend somebody from staff has their signature on it, just so, I think that's a process when we determine that the permit's done. That comes back and, it's, Ashley's got a stack of permits, just like it ought to be a stack of COs. She ought to always be signing the COs, that was you probably, but.
Yep.
So I think, again, it's however the process is, as Bryce was pointing out,
Yeah, I
whoever's
mean,
managing it, but it's always.
Yeah, and I
somebody-
agree with that to some extent, but to say, well, Ashley needs to sign these, that's putting Ashley's name on the line on something that she had nothing to do with issue, nothing to do with the review part. So.
I feel like there's also permits that we don't see that get
Right.
issued. So
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think now that I'm thinking about it, that's why that
Good point.
list should be
Yeah.
kept with the city secretary. If she's going to issue
Yeah.
those single trade permits, then it should probably stay with.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I see that as like after the completeness check, and when you go, yes, this is good, we're gonna proceed, whatever type of permit it is at that point, it says, hey, we're ready to update the spreadsheet with this.
Yeah.
Or it gets assigned like a permit number when they
Yeah.
submit it, and then
Yeah.
It needs to get assigned a permit number when you submit them, and the reason for that is so that if something is pending and it's pending for a long time, and you take payment, and then we get audited, then it's very easy to see what money was collected for what permit.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
is that an option upon invoicing is when the spreadsheet gets updated? Is that, because I know that won't work for all, because we have some permits that don't have costs associated, right? Like some small,
the only one that doesn't have cost associated is tree trimming.
right.
Everything else has a cost. Tree removal, if it's not in conjunction with the building permit, has its own list. But everything else has a cost associated with it, and it needs to have a permit number assigned before that initial invoice is sent.
Okay.
Yeah. And coming up with this workflow, I can, not that we're not wanting to do as much as possible
Right.
for the sake of business, but at the same time, trying to keep consultants as consultants. That way we've got a system for when y'all set up permit software, we're not redoing the system. It's just, we've got a process set up where, okay, in my permit now or whatever it is, it gets routed out to the individual reviewers, and so, but still kept in-house. I know it creates a little bit more work, but it's still kept in-house. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anything more on any of that? We need to follow up on that and make sure that we've got a firm process, because that will come back
Mhm.
up with council. Okay. I've got to get to this next meeting. I'm profusely apologizing to our 3 o'clock who's been waiting in the back for some time now. Real quickly, what do you still need on variances and plats?
I was just going to go through that and make sure we got a process down and we know who's
We don't have
who the
so here's where I am on that. We don't have a process down. We are going to, though, that's why I asked how many were on her plate. There aren't too many.
Yeah, so there's 2 variances. I've got 2 plats that I'm going to take to Travis County sometime tomorrow and file for the city on my last day. So the permit, the plat intake day is the 8th of the month. I don't anticipate any, so I think you've got a month to figure that piece out.
That was the main thing. I wanted to check who's going to be doing flat plats and who's doing variances,
we're
because
gonna-
you had mentioned Bryce doing plats,
Yeah,
which is
we're
cool.
gonna
I
go
just
back
want
through listening to the dialogue that we had with Charlie earlier,
Mhm.
and then Bryce is gonna come up with sort of a
Cool.
checklist on both of those items. Then he's gonna get it to you to put it into this awesome format, and then we're gonna circle back up with our small group and
Cool.
figure out if that's the way we want it or not.
Awesome.
Cool.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, that was a lot. Thank you, Carrie.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
everyone.
Everybody.
Okay, Freeze, thank you guys.
Hey,
Bryce,
bet.
thank you. Tell Charlie thanks. Ashley, thanks for keeping us going. With that, if you will turn off the recording. And to those council members, when we send you this link, if you're still listening to this, congratulations, you made it to the end. This is it. Yeah.